level. The question then is, why is Sri Lanka allowing this ship to dock in Hambantota, and that too for an entire week?
Yes, Jacob, thank you for having me. So the message is really clear. Sri Lanka has no involvement with what China is doing with their Yuan Wang ships. But in the perspective of Sri Lanka have to abide by the international law. So if this ship is passing through innocent passage, and if this ship, if we are not able to process any evidence that this ship, as you call a spy ship, Sri Lankan authorities have no reason to reject it, because that would create much more conflict for Sri Lanka. So as you said, Sri Lanka is going through a crisis time, but India has always been a great support for Sri Lanka throughout ages, and we have culturally links to India. So the relationship has not moved anywhere from that. But we understand China is going through a rapid development. They have their own space programs running in their country. For that, they also need to move their vessels or process their space programs in accordance to the international law. So
Mr. Ranaraju, can I, just for clarification's sake, I know that the Hambantota port is on a 99-year lease. Many of those assets have been taken over by the Chinese. But are they not required to ask for the Sri Lankan government's permission? And is it not within the power of the Sri Lankan government and the maritime authorities there, if they feel there is a concern around the ship, and surely India does feel there is a concern around the ship, that they reject permission to the ship to dock?
Yes, Jacob. So this ship is not classified as a military ship even. First, I should say that it's a survey and tracking ship under the International Maritime Organization. Doesn't matter any ship, if it's Japanese, Chinese, German, any ship that is coming to Sri Lanka or even to Hambantota port should have a clearance from the Sri Lankan Navy. That Correct. Is not commercial vessels, that are military vessels or state-owned vessels by other countries. This is very clear. Indian ships have been in Hambantota, US ships have been in Hambantota, and Japanese ships have been in Hambantota. So the message is clear. Sri Lanka is not taking any sides here. Sri Lanka is going through its economic transformation, and China is a very sound partner for Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka will always work with China.
How do you respond to what Mr. Ranaraja is saying? Venus Upadhyaya, how do you respond to what Mr. Yasiru Ranaraja of the BRI Sri Lanka chapter just said? He's saying that this is not a military ship. The way they see it, the Sri Lankan authorities, it doesn't pose a threat to them. And that's why permission has been given by the Sri Lankan Navy for this ship to dock. Venus Upadhyaya, can you hear me? All right, we'll try and see if we can fix that. Einar Tangen is also joining us. Einar, it comes back to a question of trust, and clearly right now, given the history of the last couple of years, particularly between India and China, the trust deficit is so bad that even 16 rounds of military talks have not led to any kind of satisfactory resolution of the standoffs that are happening in eastern Ladakh. In that background, to send a reconnaissance ship, and that too to a country that has been going through a fair amount of turmoil in the last 6 months, that is where suspicions are being raised here in India. How do you respond to that, to these suspicions?
Well, I mean, obviously the relationships are not very good. I mean, you could say the same things about the Quad. China has questions about why India is joining together with, groups who are antagonistic towards it. Both sides don't trust each other. But, quite frankly, this is much ado about nothing. The truth is that ship could be sailing in international waters 200 miles off your coast, and there's nothing that could be done about it. The fact that it's in a port makes no difference. Its tracking abilities are exactly the same. So this idea that it's parked there for 5 days is causing international stir in India is kind of silly.
You're saying it makes no difference if the ship is docked in Hambantota, 350 kilometers from the Indian maritime boundary, as it were, as opposed to it being 200 nautical miles away from Hambantota?
No, 200 miles away from your coast. They can sail in international waters, as can Indian ships. So, I mean, this idea that it's 350 miles away, if they want a closer look, they can get 200 miles away. I mean, look, it's not a real big issue. The issue here is the lack of trust. India wants to see this, that they have the right to tell another sovereign nation, Sri Lanka, what they can do. Obviously, Sri Lanka is in a very, very tenuous position because of their economy. You can blame it on China, but the fact is you're putting a tremendous amount of pressure, and it's asserting that you have the right to tell other nations what to do simply because they're near you. If that is in fact the case, then you're in essence putting forward your own kind of Monroe Doctrine without